Clap one time if you can hear my voice. Clap 2 times if you can hear my voice. So there's different ways of getting people back together. You're clearly a very cooperative group, but sometimes when you have you have lots of people in a space and they're up and moving and doing and things. That's just one simple technique of getting everyone's attention again. We did a quick think, pair, share. I heard a lot of really interesting voices. Maybe we could have 2 people to express what you talked about. What resonated with you?
To me, the word engaged, which was synonym of active. So the fact that the student become real protagonists and it's not teacher-centered environment, rather students. So those are the engage was the very first word that strikes me. And then we were talking together and she explained to me better the dialogical meaning making.
So this is getting back to that negotiation of meaning that we talked about this morning. That just because you're saying a thing and maybe your grammar and your vocabulary is great, but you're speaking with somebody who doesn't have the same proficiency as you, you need to find a way to make meaning with that person. Okay, maybe one more thought?
I like the pairing of aesthetic with academic. Those aren't often paired together. Affective can kind of, in a sense, play to both sides, but I like academic and aesthetic learning. Because they're not juxtaposed here. There's an and. I like that.
This seems to be getting into multi-literacies, that we're not just doing transactions in a language, that we're getting to know the artistic qualities of the language, even at the beginning level. Okay, so this, and just to plug again, if anyone wants to think about taking a longer course in this, please talk to me, because there is, for school teachers and also university educators, there are workshops in this that are longer and more in depth. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, we're going to continue from the poster dialogue, which scaffolds into a role play that elicits spontaneous speech. Okay, so I'll invite you to kind of slip back into the role of somewhat cooperative learners. You don't have to be model students. And I will slip into the role of an instructor. And to do that, I will be putting on this scarf to signify that now I am the instructor. And then afterwards, we'll reflect on the activity. So are there any questions at this point?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so now I am your instructor. Okay, so now that we're warmed up, please get into groups of 3 or 4. We're going to slip into different roles and role play a scenario from a student dorm. Okay, so go ahead and organize yourselves. Groups of 3 or 4.
Tom?
Okay. Hello.
Tom, nice to meet you. Maria.
So the first thing we're going to do is create characters. So you're not just you in a dorm, you are a character. Okay? So I'm passing out some slips for that. There you go. So the most important things to answer on this are your name, which can be you, but I would actually encourage you to be someone else, and some annoying thing that you do. And I would invite you, as you're filling these out, you can also flesh out a character thinking about maybe how old you are, what you're studying, what your willingness to argue is. Do you enjoy conflict, or are you trying to avoid conflict and be peaceful? And as you're doing that, I'll pass out name tags. You can put your character's name and your annoying trait on the name tag.
This is just pretending, yes?
This is a role play. So you can be someone very unlike yourself.
Don't worry, my annoying trait is
Each person is their own character.
Each person.
Never said this.
Huh?
Yeah, we have to have a name. Okay. Oh, no, that one?
Emily, if you'd like the German.
So I can put the name whenever I.
So it's with our age,
Right,
all these
the
things.
name.
So are we supposed to be university students? So we, okay, so that's.
So you're all university students.
And we fill out the whole thing, right? No, what did I do?
You can fill out as much or as little as you would like, as much or as little as you'd like to develop your character.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Here. Then you want to be up. You say busybody, and somebody always wants to know that this is a busybody.
Okay, and let's take another 1 minute to finish this up.
This was fun. You get a chance to be that annoying roommate we just wrote about.
Ice cream
Okay, and don't forget to make yourself a name tag so that your fellow classmates know who you are and why you're annoying.
Oh, they're little. Oh,
Willingness to argue, is that a yes or no?
I just put no.
Okay.
I said I avoid it always in my character. Just walk away.
And just a reminder, try to do this in German because we're in Germany. Right?
Wait, what? What?
This is a reminder because you are German students that we are
The
doing
teacher
this
is
in
telling us
target
that,
language.
yeah.
Am I supposed to put my name and my
The teacher is
annoying
reminding you to use the target language.
Somehow
trait? Am I supposed to
indicate
put
your
my name
name.
and my annoying trait on the name?
Yes, your name and the annoying trait in a way that your classmates can read.
Well done.
I'm really sorry. I apologize for complicating
So if you
Word reference not
I don't think
I don't think
And so we have to put the name.
My roommate never washed dishes, she just throw them away. Like you would find things missing and you throw the trash away. It's like, oh,
That's what
yeah.
I actually have a coworker who lives with her daughter who's, they're both adults.
Okay.
Daughter will wash dishes.
Okay, so here's our scenario. Each group, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, we have 4 groups. Each group lives in a flat share, okay?
I'm practicing.
In our context, this is in a student dorm, and in our context, this means that you have your own bedroom, but you are sharing a bathroom and a kitchen, okay? Everyone is annoyed, and you've decided to have a meeting to seek solutions for the problems of the flat share, okay? So you can create rules, you can compromise with each other, but because this is a dorm, you can't kick anyone out, okay? But people can choose to leave if they choose to do so. Okay, so for this meeting, you've come into the common room of the dorm, and by coincidence, oh, there's 3 other group meetings happening. What a coincidence. And so at this point, are there any questions about this scenario that you're working on? Okay? Good, okay. Then when I put on this hat, I will become a student as well. So I will become the student Zabina, and we'll start the role play. Okay, any questions? Okay. Ah, Hallöchen! Oh, there's so many arguing groups here. That's really perfect. Awesome, because I'm working on an article for the school newspaper, and this is about the topic of living together. So maybe you could introduce yourselves and why, like what you're doing. Why are you here? So maybe, could somebody introduce themselves? Yeah, you.
I'm Florine. We're here because they're messy. And I don't know, like, I'm sorry.
Okay, thanks, Florine. Who else is here?
Arlecchina from Sicily. And I'm here because I found out so many weird things about these people, and I'm a little concerned. I'm a busybody.
Ooh. Okay, well, I'll write that down for the article. Okay. Okay, so thank you. So we get the picture now, so there's some conflicts here. So get on with your fights, I mean your meetings, and then I'll just snoop around and I'll take notes from my article.
This way you know what we're talking about.
There you all guys.
So
You talk too much, you're always saying the wrong thing. I don't know why you always speak. Be quiet, you
I
talk
don't
too
wash
much.
dishes and I just throw away your stuff.
We're talking against you, why are you talking? Everyone is talking. Listen to what I have to say, you're supposed to be talking to me. You need to be quiet.
Yeah, and I don't wash dishes.
I think AJ should just do everything.
Everyone has something to say, and I don't understand why, but it's all so unimportant. You only should talk when you've got something important to say, like I do. I can never know what to say. You are all a bunch of girls. Girls, you can say all this talk. Who is this person anyway? Who is Maria? Anna. Who is Anna? You can't be busy to say nothing. You have nothing to say.
I just think about its message. I have an idea. Maybe you can like make it
You're talking about hair. That's what we're talking about is hair. That's what you don't need hair. I can show you.
She's not very good at that.
Again with the yoga. She's always talking about her yoga.
Well, you can take out the garbage.
And you're always bossy. You're bossy. You're frightening. You, I don't know what's wrong with you.
You always have to have a little door for
Because you have nothing to say. You can interrupt. No interrupt. You have nothing to say. I say it for a reason.
we'll work it all out.
Look at the hair going everywhere here.
We need you to.
I know I don't do this anymore.
No, it isn't.
Because you guys because I think they can be better.
Here's about this. Is there someone, no one makes it, no, why is no one making something for Sasha to eat?
I think it'll be
She thinks nothing. I don't know. All she does is brush hair.
No, that's
This might be fun. This would be great roommates.
Guys, hey, so I want to interrupt your meetings really quick because this is so amazing what you're talking about. I have really good notes for my article, but if you could all do something like a written results from your meeting. Okay, just something. I mean, something to like. like, what did you compromise? Or maybe somebody decided to move out, or maybe you have this cleaning plan and you want to say who does what when. Just some sort of written results.
Do we stay in character for our result?
Who are characters?
Okay.
I'll be
You're all students, just
So, what
messy
I did
people.
say.
And then,
I did say.
but then I also want to give you the chance. Hey. I also want to give you the chance that maybe, so you have something written that you've all talked about, but maybe you have another opinion of the meeting. So if you could send me something by next week, either like something written down, or you could do a video of like how you felt when you were having this meeting, and if you got everything you wanted, that would be perfect. So the written results in the next 15 minutes, because I gotta go.
You're annoying.
Away from people.
So, just wait.
How do you cook that?
Something very quiet.
She makes sure the cars are AJ Crockpot.
Stop talking.
Bridges for
Talk is how I give it away. I don't give Good luck with that, obviously.
No, you have to compromise.
Annoying.
She can come from here everywhere but the kitchen, they don't want to get in.
And not tonight.
You cook, we decided to cook.
Okay, guys, thanks for your help. That was a really
I'm
fast
the three of you.
Okay, you guys, that was such a fast 15 minutes. So I'll go ahead and collect your written results. And then I'm going to put this into my article. So thank you all so much. Don't forget your individual reflections, okay, next week. So then I'll write this up, and then you're going to be in the newspaper. All right? So thanks, guys. And now we're going to get out of roll by counting backwards from 10 to 1. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, yay. Good job, students. Now we're going to reflect on this, what we just did. Okay? So, what did we just do in this role play? Okay, so you were not yourself. Okay, and how did you communicate?
Very quickly.
Words, gestures. What else did we do? A little bit of feast.
Yeah, okay. So what tools did you use for help if you couldn't remember a word or?
I think we created our own character, so we generated him. We imposed a certain vocabulary and personality on him.
Based on what we knew.
Yeah, exactly.
So to build on this, to go to the analysis, how was the atmosphere? And how did, what emotions did you experience in role?
What became actors?
Yeah.
We were engaged in our creation of roles in our play.
And as your characters, so think of the name on your name tag, how did you feel? How did your character feel?
Righteous. Everybody's doing the wrong thing, I'm doing the right thing.
That was me. Again, you talk too much. Again, you are talking too much.
Okay, and what else did you feel?
I mean, if we are ourselves, students could be kind of shy around, but it's just it's another person, so you can say whatever you want. Right. So they won't feel that. You can get rid of shyness by creating the roles.
Yeah, so you could say things that maybe you wouldn't say as yourself.
Right.
Interesting. Okay, how would you use this experience, this role play, to use the target language in your real life? Like, how does this enter into that?
I don't know, maybe learning how to talk to people, I don't know, who maybe aren't necessarily from your background, and interacting with people in situations where you're not as comfortable.
Because that happens, you know, this is only our first year of German, and we've mostly been in the classroom, but when you're outside of the classroom, maybe you have other things, maybe you have conflicts, maybe you have things with emotions involved, relationships.
I think probably because of the prompt, we were all people we probably wouldn't want to be. And so a lot of what I think we would have said in the target language would have been the kind of thing we wouldn't necessarily say in our daily lives. It gave us a chance, in a sense, to practice different kinds of collocations and inflection and things like that, in the way we spoke even.
Oh, you sure know a lot about grammar and about language. Very impressed.
I'm an engineer.
Okay.
I don't know if it relates to the question per se, but upon seeing how others reacted,
Yeah.
it made me think about my students who are shy in the classroom and do not want to express or produce. And I empathize. I mean, I sympathize. I'm trying. Here's another way for them to flourish. Yes.
Blossom.
Sí. Ajá. Correcto.
So I will now come out of the teacher role, and I am back to Devon, the person giving this workshop, and we're going to do this one last time. This is like the movie Inception. It's a dream with So thinking about this activity, so the poster dialogue and the role play together. Real quick, maybe quick description, and then we can move to analysis and reflection. So what you said we did is students were speaking in different ways. Other thoughts?
Are you talking about like what we were doing in the activity exactly?
What we've done in this activity, so, and I feel like actually sometimes the limit to this strategy of DAR is that sometimes you do get these silences. So I always do a little bit of wait time, but I have noticed that as students get better and better at this, they're like, okay, let's just move on. So we can move on to the analysis, which is what you already brought up. You saw there were students that you empathized with, that you could say, sometimes students are normally shy in class, but they may get more into a role and feel more comfortable speaking.
Also, I guess, and that is what acting does already, is that you put yourself in somebody else's shoes. You told us not to be ourselves, but to be somebody else. That means you're populating, ¿cómo se dice, somebody's life. Other qualities that we may not like, but hey, this is my role and I gotta do it. And so that gets me out of my comfort zone, or else that gets me challenged, and if I'm adventurous, hey, I'll do it. So you see, lots of things.
And I think this is, it moves past your typical first year role play where you're you and you're a waiter and you order some food and then you take the order. Right? So you're building this new character and you're also reacting to someone else. And in a way, this had a built-in conflict. So there was some conflict happening.
And we had to listen too.
Yeah.
You couldn't just have, like, I wrote down these things, you had to react.
And the fact that you added the question, why do I do that, get us thinking about reasons why people sometimes act in specific ways. So it gets you, helps you open your mind to understand why people would do something.
And then I actually speaks for using, instead of just a bad roommate, because this is your opinion of what someone else does, using what a bad roommate does that you think a bad roommate is and what somebody else might think that you do. So it's getting into that, like, maybe I do something that I find is perfectly fine, but other people find it annoying. So it's jumping into that. So then, how was this different than a typical class?
A lot of movement.
How else?
I think for an instructor, it can be really, if you're traditional, very unnerving to let go of the control of what's being done within the group.
Yeah.
This was completely student-centered, learner-centered. And so when you became another person yourself again, but that's kind of it. It's the instructor has to just kind of say, there's probably going to be a lot of misused words, a lot of bad grammar going on, and yet we're bad grammar, but the activity goes on, and that's kind of the cool thing about it. So it's not traditional at all. I like that.
And one thing I enjoy as an instructor is that I wasn't able to do it in this context because we were all speaking English, but when students would ask me questions, how do I say it? My answer would be like, ich kann kein Englisch, ich weiß nicht, was du sagst. I don't know what you're saying, I can't speak English. So you get out of the dictionary role as the instructor. You can also, if students aren't really on task, you can kind of poke them with like, that has nothing to do with my article, get back to the article. You can poke them in ways that's different from the traditional, like, I'm the instructor, you should be doing your work. But it is unnerving in some sense. You have to, so I like to show, I have these really detailed notes with times and whatever, but on the one hand, you're really, you've planned it very well, but then you also have to be able to let it go, because it can take on a whole new life. And one way that if you are, as an instructor, you're concerned maybe some conflict is happening, if you're using these props, you can take them off to say, now I'm your teacher, let's fix this. Okay, now we're back in rule. So you have even these physical cues.
It gives you some control.
Yeah.
Right.
So
To a certain degree.
to a certain degree.
And I like that you are an actor. You became
Yes.
like the student, an actor. You weren't just in your static position of the teacher.
And in a way, you can set the tone of goofiness by being the biggest goofball yourself. And they're like, well, man, if my teacher's doing that, then I can be
Right.
out of control. Like, there were a lot of really creative characters, even just the short amount of time that we had. So what other concerns do you have about this besides, as an instructor, you need to be able to let go a little bit? What kind of concerns do you have about using this kind of technique in your classrooms?
I'm thinking UT from the University of Texas, we are so being required to show outcomes for everything we do, that there's almost a sense of how is it that I, as the instructor, can demonstrate what they got out of this without a kind of formal assessment of, the quiz or something that's stupid. And yet that's kind of what the institution keeps requiring of us to do, is to demonstrate that that activity, which I know was a useful activity, was useful, that they got something of it. So it's a little bit, because of us losing a bit of control, it's hard to assess what just happened.
And that's where something like this is helpful, where you have two assignments, something to keep them
Sure.
committed to it.
Sure.
And then you can, I ended up using different posters or other assignments like this. Reflective assignments is another way. You can have them reflect, this one is in character, you can have them reflect out of character. And I ended up using that for a research study. So it's not only assessment, it's also data, which was really exciting. Okay. Well, I'll kind of wrap this up so that we have time for the Q&A. So when you're doing these kind of activities, it's really important to scaffold into it. So this, in a way, the poster dialogue, is getting their prior knowledge, it's kind of activating that. It's also getting some vocabulary there that you can also recast or implicitly correct on the posters. You're also scaffolding the character and the situation, that it needs to be something that is relatable and relevant to your course. And then, like I said, you carefully plan, but let go. Okay, so thank you for playing along. Now we'll have some time for questions and answers.
Do you use it in a regular phase classroom or intensive? Because I was just a little bit, because I absolutely love the idea of donning a new identity and personality and acting out in a way that you wouldn't in your normal way. And I ask my students to take Russian names so they can also kind of, to the beginning of the semester, they choose a new name, new identity, everything. So, but I was just wondering how, in terms of the time, is it a time-consuming endeavor, or you can actually fit it into intensive classroom, so it's just go, go, go?
It totally depends. So I've used this in several different contexts. I've used it in first and second semester German, and also third semester, which is intensive. And I've often used these as warm-ups into something else. I have had trouble getting, so having these two together is, like 2 things together is already a little special. My original lesson plan had 4 things together, which I've never been able to fit into a UT class. Because it is a time thing, and we have these considerations of what's in the curriculum, what do we have to get through. And what I try to do is double dip, that there's something in the curriculum, especially if I find it boring, that's the thing that I'm going to try and do an activity for. Also, like Alex mentioned, tableaus, those are something you can do for vocabulary. You're introducing vocabulary, you can have 3 students come together and depict a new vocabulary word, the other students are guessing what it is. So I tend to use these things, they tend to be warm-ups, except for the role plays, because that is something that has been put into our curriculum. So there is now a culture of doing role plays, and what I do there is I kind of spice them up.
And just a kind of follow-up question, because this activity is so interesting that you don't want to, you said it go its own course, kind of, you don't want to stop students when they're so warm and talking, and that's another concern, like,
Which is a difficult thing, which literally is why I warned you at the beginning of the talk, like, we're gonna be going quicker than we normally would. And you, as an instructor, that's the whole, like, plan and then let it go. If you see some amazing things happening and you don't get to that last topic on your lesson plan, if there's a way you can squish it in tomorrow, or you can assign it as homework, there are different ways that you can kind of extend it to let it go and see these interesting things happen. But again, it depends on your context, how much freedom you have in the curriculum.
So, like, I really want to do those things back in Turkey. I teach English, so like I want to do those things in my classroom. But the problem is, like, my students are not really used to being active in class, and then like when I try to do this kind of activities, they just don't understand what they are doing. Like, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Are we talking? And then they're not really used to it. So I mean, I don't know if your students have been doing